Welcome to Flourishing Unfiltered, the podcast for high achievers who seek a professional life that feels as good as it looks.
We talk about the unseen journey of struggles on the path to success that people rarely talk about.
I'm Kieran Smith, positive psychology and leadership coach and consultant.
And I'm Dr. Michael Neuhaus, positive psychology and self-leadership speaker and consultant.
Before we begin today, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're recording. We pay our deepest respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
As we share our stories today, we honour the rich tradition of storytelling that has been passed down through generations.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Future of Flourishing, a futures thinking media, training and venture lab dedicated to bridging the gap between scientific knowledge and practical application in the field of human flourishing.
The Future of Flourishing is committed to creating a comprehensive ecosystem of communication and innovation platforms. Find out more about the Future of Flourishing at futureofflourishing.com.
If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to us.
Hey, welcome to today's episode. And I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit like a little fangirl today because we have Jodi Wellman with us today. Now, Jodi Wellman, if you're not familiar with her yet, is a speaker, an author, executive coach, and facilitator on living lives worth living. She founded 4,000 Mondays to help people make the most of the time they are lucky to be above ground. With 25 years of corporate leadership experience, most recently as Senior Vice President of Operations at a leading health and lifestyle organization, Jodi has led private CEO advisory boards and coaches teams to work well and live even better. Jodi has a Master's of Applied Positive Psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where she's also an assistant instructor and facilitator in the Penn Resilience program. Now, she's also an ICF professional certified coach and a certified professional coactive coach. Now, Jodi's book, which is absolutely amazing, is called You Only Die Once, How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. Her TEDx talk, How Death Can Bring You Back to Life, has amassed over 1.3 million views and is the 14th most watched TEDx talk released in 2022 out of 15,900 TEDx talks. She's a regular contributor to Positive Psychology Today as well. Now, if that hasn't shocked you enough yet, I am so incredibly honored to introduce you today, Jodi, especially because I know that you probably only have around maybe 1,800 or so Wednesdays left. According to your website, you share the most incredible resources, so many free ones on your website. And one of my favorite ones is your calculator for how many Mondays you have left to live. I'm not sure if I want to reveal how many Mondays I have left. Karen, you're in a good line. But thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Wow. Well, after that warm intro, I am even more excited to be here than I thought I was. And I'm so excited to talk about how we're all going to die and make it amusing.
One of my favorite topics, and I guess one of the passions we share. Jodi, when people become familiar with you and your journey, you really have to scratch your head and go, with someone who's enjoyed such an amazing and inspiring corporate career, I think anyone would wonder what inspired you to leave that behind and start out on your solopreneur journey. Now, as someone who's read your book, I have a fair idea, and if you're not comfortable talking about it, that's fine too. But would you mind sharing what inspired you to start on the solopreneur journey?
Oh, I'm totally happy to, although I do think it would be funny if I said, no, can you please just read pages 12 through 14 or something? I am happy to share.
I'd totally be happy to do that again.
Yeah, right. Well, so here I was having this, corporate existence, and I was, super happy until, like most of us, until like I wasn't. And I got to the point where I knew I wanted more. And this to me is like a metaphor for life for many of us, right? We have that niggling sense that like, I think there's more out there for me, but I'm super scared and I don't know how to go and get it. And can't it just come land in my lap? So yeah. I will be super honest. I look back, and while I'm not proud of the way that I handled my angst, I'm actually glad I went through it because it makes me understand the rest of all of our, the human experience, right? Of like when we are wanting something different, but we're scared. And I knew I needed something different. I knew I had reached my limit at the time. I felt stuck. You know, that feeling like you're stuck by like the trappings of success. Ooh, well, it's a great problem to have. But then you're just going home feeling empty and kind of bored. And I just wanted to be headhunted. I wanted somebody to just pluck me out of my corporate sort of, malaise. But it didn't happen. Yeah. And so I tell this really corny story, but I had a stapler at work. We all have it in our drawer. And I was stapling pages together. And then one day my stapler ran out of staples, as it is wont to do. And I remember I went and reloaded it, and I was like, as I put the row of staples in the stapler, I was like, I better not be here by the time this row of staples is used up. And I went back to my desk and I sat down and I felt so encouraged, except for the fact that I did diddly squat about it. I did nothing. I took no effort. I applied for nothing. I did no research. I didn't figure. And then a year or so later, my stapler ran out of staples, and I felt like I had self-harmed myself. That feeling of like, I let myself down, that I didn't take any action. And I'll tell you, I reloaded the stapler again and said, I better not still be here. And I was. So that happened for about 2 or 3 years where I was wanting out and didn't know what to do to figure it out. And so I finally hired a career coach, figured out leadership development and coaching was the change I needed to make. But let me just tell you, like, those were some, a few years of just staple-ridden, like, anxiousness of like, why can't I figure this out? And I was judging myself for not being able to. Like, you know what I mean? That feeling of, why can't I figure it out? Yeah.
Totally. Almost like a little bit of a paralysis. So can I just quickly ask one follow-up question there? Because you said you weren't proud of how you handled that angst. And I have to say, I think that angst of feeling stuck in a languishing situation, whether that's in your career, in your life, I guess a lot of people can probably, resonate with that. How did you handle your angst? Do you mean just that you remained inactive, or what was it that made you unhappy about the way you handled your angst?
Yeah, I would say that it's a combination of mostly feeling like, why can't I get a grip on it? Like, I should just be able to figure out how to figure out what I want next and go after it. But that would require, courage and confidence and also knowledge about what the things were that I was interested in. I had a lot of interests. And then more insidiously during that time, I was in the throes of a unfortunate eating disorder, which was a bit of a sticking thing too, because that was how I was trying to feel like a semblance of control over what did not feel very controllable. So that was part of that package. But, luckily I have some self-compassion about that part of my journey. And now look at it more as honey, like when you're feeling stuck again, you actually have a lot more agency than you think to take some kind of action forward, Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And Jodi, I must admit, I really love your story about the staple. It's very easy to understand. And I feel as though many of our listeners probably feel as though they're in a similar situation too. It's that notion that, we want things to improve, but we don't necessarily know how to change, or don't necessarily want to change because there's an uncertainty attached to that. And it can be scary as well. And that's very much what I'm hearing in your story here too. And I'm wondering if, in that time of transitioning from, what was, quite a successful sort of corporate role into where you are now, was there any sort of times that you had to navigate some uncertainty about the shift, and what impact did that have on you as a leader in this space, and, as navigating a solopreneur sort of life?
Yeah, I love this question because, there's this sort of fantasy of a happily ever after where you're like, I got out alive of the corporate world, and then I started my own business, and the rest has been history. And so it's been a good ride, but I've still learned along the way a couple of things that certainly some patterns will die hard. So the instinct that I look at and I go, wow, like this is the thing I want to help protect us from in our lives, is that sort of settling mentality. And so let me paint this for you. So I leave, woohoo, I get out and I start leadership development and coaching, and I was excited and it was going well, and I was building my business. And then I even went into business partnership with a fabulous person who's just still a friend, and it was great. But I always had this like little tapping on the back of my shoulder where it was like, oh, this topic of memento mori, remembering we must die, that topic of mortality being a motivator. And so do you ever have like a topic you just happen to really enjoy? I don't know, maybe it's about gerbils, maybe it's about, I don't know, climate change. But you always collect articles or quotes or things that just interest you. I was so passionate about this topic. And I just knew, because I'm more of a creative sort, like I wanted to do something with it. But here I am now. I'm a freaking like corporate consultant. I'm like, how am I going to come in and talk to companies about how we're all going to die? Like that's going to get me fired fast. And so I couldn't quite navigate that either. And so here I was battling with this kind of tension of the entrepreneurial spirit was alive and kicking. Like I want to do something with this, but I don't know how. And so then I was like, well, this is eerily reminiscent of feeling stuck from when I was in my corporate role of like, well, just what if you explored it and figured it out? And so for me, what that path looked like, and I am proud of this part of my path, was I built a workshop and I found a women's group to present it to. And nobody left the room, even though I was talking all about the Grim Reaper. So I was like, well, this is a mark of success. And then I really kept wanting, it was like the more, in life, like the more you breathe life into something, it's like oxygen to it and even helium, and it just lifts it. And I was like, wait a minute, I want more and more to do with this. So I went back to school, to grad school, to study positive psychology, at UPenn. And I did not expect that to be a life changer, but I did my thesis on this topic. And I'll tell you, it was like there was no turning back. Like once I got the confidence that came from that empirically based evidence, I think I just needed it to be that nerdy enough, to know like, oh, I can talk about this in front of groups and know that it's legit. Not that you need to have that, right? But I needed that confidence personally. And then I had to move on from my business partnership. And that was difficult for me because I really love my business partner and he's a great guy. And so I had to do that thing again of like, first of all, how ironic would it be if here I am about to start talking about a message about life's short, get on with it, don't delay your dreams. And then I would tell the story about another version of the stapler for several more years. I could not handle that. That was not going to be part of my story. So it was one of those like, kind of shit or get off the pot moments of like, do this thing, honey. Cause like, you're not getting any younger, but also like, this is, I don't know if you have like a calling. It was like this magnetic pull to do it and I couldn't not do it. And I was like, if I ignore this call, I'm an idiot, like an even bigger idiot than we already have established. Yeah.
So would you say there that like, what would you say was the big catalyst for change thing? Like what was the thing that just tipped you over and made you go, yes, like I'm not going to let that happen again. We're not going to go another year of refilling the stapler. What specific moment do you think it was?
What a good question. I recalled a very visceral time when my mom died. She died at 58 and she had a heart attack. And I remembered cleaning up her apartment and it was this like all the vestiges of dreams that kind of, well, I would say God buried with her, but she was cremated. So I guess I'll just be crass and say that God burned with her. But, I say it lovingly, I miss your mom. But the dreams went with her in the urn. And it was startling to me because, she had these manuscripts and like business cards of like businesses she wanted to start. And I, at the time, I remember being very distinctly shook that, this could be me. I hope I don't die early. And I certainly hope I'm not the one that has these dreams. And so that was, for me, it was like this pivotal moment of, I'm on the cusp right now of this being mine again. And I knew I'd started my own leadership development again, but I was with that partner. And so I felt like I had the yearnings for it to be my baby. And I was eerily recalling, my mom's drawers in her desk. So I remember that being a very distinct feeling of, almost like, I don't want to say it's corny, like I wasn't doing it for her. I do think that writing the book in some ways was a subconscious way of bringing her dreams alive because she wrote a book and illustrated it that she'd ever had the guts to send out too much and get published. But I would say it was like that recollection of like, oh, Mom, I was instructive. I don't mean to throw shade on her. Like, not that I don't want my life to turn out like yours did. That sounds kind of like a really crappy daughter thing to say, but it was definitely a motivator about, like sweet woman, I'd love to take a different course. Yeah.
Yeah, very fair. And thank you for sharing. I mean, we all find inspiration in different parts of our lives. And I was just, as you were telling the story, I was like, I'm curious to know a little bit more here.
Yeah.
So, Jodi, what would you say helped you navigate these challenges? So, as you're on this journey and you're realizing, hang on, I really need to quit that business partnership in order to make this my thing. I can hear you said, getting the degree from Penn, or the evidence, knowing that it's all evidence-based behind you, that gave you some confidence. Then you had this, I would almost call it a moment of post-traumatic growth, or realization at least of some sort, that, realization due to your mum's passing. What do you think helped you navigate these challenges?
By the way, can I just say, I love your style, you guys, because I feel like I'm in a really great therapy session right now. This is fabulous. This is so good. and because you're making me think about things that I would say, as I recline back on the couch, I would say that...
I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'll take it as a compliment.
It's fabulous because it's so good. I'm not paying a penny for this therapy. This is fantastic. This is great. And I do believe that others can have therapy through other people's therapy. So, no, this is awesome. And so this is helping me realize with startling clarity something I really just believe to be true. It's like, in life, when you take one step forward, the difference of like getting the ball rolling versus that thing where we're like, I love really warm fleece blankets. And that to me is like the metaphor of like, my default is to just be covered in the blanket and therefore like cocooned and not taking action. So for me, the thing was, okay, I've got this dream. I finished my thesis. I'm raring to go. All these resources and references. And I'm like chock full of, the research that I want to bring to life in a more fun, doodled way to the masses. And I had this, like, it was the pivotal moment, right? Like, do I start the website, start the process, or do I do the usual thing, which would be to play it safe and maybe just dream about it for another 3 months and then decide I'll do it then, And for me, it was like taking some kind of step forward. So for me, it was like coming up with a really boring Gantt chart in a spreadsheet of like all the things I need to do. And I called it my anti-chicken shit list, that I have a file. It's in my Excel spreadsheet. And it was like all the things that I need to do. And even doing the spreadsheet, like even starting the spreadsheet makes a difference, right? And then it was like, well, I'm going to register the domain. And doing those little things one at a time, it was like, it shows yourself, and we know this from psychology, it's like you're demonstrating to yourself one tiny bit at a time, I'm the kind of person who gets things done. I'm the kind of person who makes her dreams happen, even if it's just a tiny little thing today. I'm the kind of person who does this. And so that helped break through this idea that that I'm going to need to think about it a little longer. And, I just had this mantra in a way. It was a little bit like, don't think, just do. And I would sometimes even throw my mom's name in there. My mom's name was Marlene. And I would sometimes even say it like, I don't know why I never called her by her name, but I'd say, don't think, just do, Mar. Like, just to kind of like, all right, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to start taking action. And the next thing you know, you're running a company. I mean, it's a company of one, but it's the dream you have,
Yeah. And I guess that probably was your goal too, right? I mean, you wanted this to be your baby, and, it's a very different kind of thing, just being a company of one than, having a team and running a business the other way. That's so cool. I love that, Jodi, because, taking those tiny little micro steps, and I don't know about you, but when I've listened to you, it sounds as though, when we take those micro steps, it's almost like you can take your fleece blanket with you as you take them. It really isn't that cold and scary and harsh out there, is it? When you take the blanket with me. Is this a moment I show my hot water bottle?
Yeah, and this is just for our listeners.
Yeah,
just for
always.
our listeners, Jodi's got her fleece blanket with her in her hands.
Oh yeah,
it's so soft. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's really cool, Micah, because that is really about like, it doesn't mean I'm abandoning, like that to me is the scary thing for some people. It's like jumping in the deep end of the pool may not be desirable, but I could put my toe in the water, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where it's like, well, once I put my toe in, well, then maybe I could go to my calf. So it's that really cool, just the building of momentum. And I think that sometimes, and what I like to talk about in terms of, really living like we mean it, it's not often the big grand gestures like you've got to quit your job and go back to school and get a divorce and move to London. I mean, maybe you do need to do those things. I don't know. Don't not do it if you've got the big plan booked and you got the plane tickets booked. But for many of us, it's like the little things, like if we're feeling a little flatlined, it could be that I demonstrated to myself that I brushed the dust off my old sketchbook that I used to love when I was sketching. And I showed myself that even though, we get scared to rekindle our old hobbies. It's a weird phenomenon, right? But like, I don't know, I pulled out the pencil and I sharpened it, and I spent 10 minutes drawing a very terrible figure, but I did it. And I feel like I'm the kind of person now who spends time doing things that makes her happy, so those are the little tiny things that build on each other. So one step at a time, baby, till we die.
It's so interesting you were saying that about, us being scared to rekindle our old passions. I had a coaching client of mine the other day, she has a massive dream and she has a few sort of smaller dreams. So we started taking a few smaller actions to sort of accommodate her current life. And then at some stage I was like, okay, how about we start tackling your big dream? And she said, oh, that makes me really nervous. And I just proposed, let's have a talk about, how maybe a plan A, B, and C to see if we can actually realize it, or how we can realize. And she said, it makes me really nervous because I feel like it's like we live in this bubble. When we have these dreams, it's like a big bubble, and as long as they're just our dreams, that bubble is there, nothing will burst it, right? And as soon as we face it, there is this vulnerability and this possibility that it could burst. And I feel like it's a similar thing with our old passions, because they become part of our identity. And what if all of a sudden we discover we're actually crap at them? Then this identity bubble bursts, doesn't it?
This is just making me feel so excited by the insanity of it all, right? That we do this. It's like, this is the thing too that I get a little overcome by, that even the idea of like the bucket list, the dreams we have for ourselves, that we'll say, oh, I'm going to do that later. Well, later, like, I'm super suspicious of later. Not just because, if we defer it too long, like the old fashioned, wait till retirement. By the way, I talked to a mortician the other day who her eyes went wide when I mentioned this idea about people deferring to retirement. She's like, don't wait till retirement. The number of bodies that she has dealt with on her table as a mortician because they just retired. I mean, first of all, let us all now never retire, because apparently we die right after we retire. But other than that, this idea like we're going to defer, postpone our existence, this like, I'm going to wait till work dies down. Yeah, keep waiting for that bus, honey. It's not coming. I'm going to wait. This idea, like, it is, I think tell me what you guys think, because you guys work with people and companies all the time and you deal with this. There's a sense of, it's a comfort in a weird way that comes from I'm going to hold this dream I have to maybe start my own business, or to start the podcast, or to go and visit Vienna, or to do all these things. It feels like it's it's back to the fleece. I'm going to do it later. And I don't need to be accountable now, because for some reason it feels a little bit scary to do now. So it's not so much because we're busy. I mean, sometimes we're busy. I get that. But it's often just because we're scared. Do you see that with your clients?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's the comfort because it's safety. It keeps the dream safe. And that's, I guess, what I mean with the bubble. As long as it's a dream, as long as it's in later land, it's like it's there. It's still there. But as soon as we start actually facing it and starting to try and tackle it, it might burst, and we might feel that, maybe we don't have the courage it takes to do that, or, maybe we don't have the means, or maybe we don't have the confidence, or we don't have whatever it might take. So I 100% agree with you. And I just want to circle back for a second to what you said before, because it sounds like a lesson. And I want to ask you about your lessons learned on your journey. Because it sounded like one of the lessons you've learned is that even just sitting down to ask yourself, if I were to face this dream and to embark on this journey, what would be the micro steps? What would be some things I would put on my spreadsheet? Even that just helps to get you out of your comfort zone without even having to do anything. Is that so? And if so, what other lessons would you add to that you've learned?
Oh, that's dynamite. Yep. It's that this is a very safe place. You could do it at the coffee shop. or, for me, I would do it at the bar, but, whatever makes you happy. I would do this is like low stakes action. I'm not promising anything right now. I'm just writing it hypothetically what I would do. And so that feels super there's a little bit of a poke in the ribs about well, now that you wrote out the 19 things that you could do next, are you going to take action? There's a tension there, but we can deal with that. Right. So it's like the planning. I became aware too. It's then you could just replan the plan, change the font, rearrange the coloring on the tab on the spreadsheet. And it's at some point, this is we know what we're doing here. We're on to ourselves. And so I think, another lesson too was I have really great friends who happen to be coaches. And there's an accountability thing that I think can really make it the difference. And this is what you guys do with your clients all the time that makes the difference, I think, between goals that are really cool ideas and dreams and then goals that just die in the water, And I think that it was that by vocalizing them and articulating them, it helps to breathe life into it. And, not only because your friend might be like, oh, and you could do this thing too. And you think, oh, I've never thought to doodle the Grim Reaper in that position. But it could also just be I said it, and now it's no longer this thing that isn't real. It's one little way about taking that bubble and in a way, I don't want to say burst the bubble, but maybe make it less of something that is going to go away. So it made it real. I would say socializing it with people that you care about, not dream killers. We all have, dream dashers in our lives. So, maybe you don't share it with the person who's going to raise their eyebrow and question your existence and how terrible your dream is. So save that, protect that. But that would be key. And I think it was reminding myself consistently. So I'll show you. I have a sticky note that I wrote down, and this happened actually when I wrote the book, and I was on a call with the publishing team at the publishers. This is the PR and media people. And so I have, one of my little glitches in life is that I am, believe it or not, as much as I will blast stuff on Instagram, it takes a lot of effort, and I never want to bother people. I don't want to, over promote and kind of be that person who's just enough already. And so she said this word, these words, and she said, it's a shameless game. And I wrote that down, and this was more to do with the PR, but I needed to hear that. And I've had this sticky note up here now for about, 9 or 10 months, maybe at least. But these are the reminders that I have for myself about being bold. So, regret research is really clear that there are categories of regrets that we can find ourselves in. And one of the main categories is regrets of boldness, that we didn't take more action, that we didn't take more risks, that we didn't put ourselves out there. And that for me is this is something I have to override. And so being conscious to do that. And so that has been thematic for me along the way. And do stickies work? Yes. Do these kinds of mantras work? Don't think, just do. Yes. And so knowing and saying, honey, I know why you're doing this. It's because you're scared and you're trying to stay safe and you love fleece. And there's also fleece at the end of the tunnel that you can get to where your dream is. So reminding myself of those things. Yeah.
Oh, I love those. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I wanted to say too, I'm very much a Gantt chart and spreadsheet person. So I totally get where you're coming from and the importance around that. It very much resonates with how I structure my work and prioritize my work. But curious to know, Jodi, you've created a very successful career for yourself, and many of our listeners are probably maybe in the infancy and trying to understand, well, how do I get started? It's all good and well. I understand I need a Gantt chart or I need a spreadsheet and I need to map things out. But do you have maybe, one or two bits of advice that you could give to people that are, maybe in the early stages or maybe navigating some of that uncertainty, just from your own experiences that you could pass on to them, a little bit of wisdom around how do I just take that leap? How do I get moving?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that worked for me and that I noticed in other people that is where there's an area of whatever this business is, right? Like starting your own thing, about whether it is to do a certain kind of coaching or to do a certain kind of consulting or certain kind of something. The thing that energizes you the most, let that be the wellspring, and I think that sometimes what we do is and for me at that point, it was like writing blog posts. I just loved doing it. And I got very clear on who my audience was. And I even kind of came up with, I took this online program where they helped you from a marketing perspective come up with like your ideal customer avatar. And so I identified 3 profiles with pictures of people that I was writing to, and I just kept writing as though I was talking to Madison, for example, was one of my profiles. And then I would find myself, okay, let's just be honest, I'd get consumed with, oh, but I have to register as the LLC, and then I have to do all the other mind-blowingly boring things that are associated with it. And I would spend time on that, and I would lose all my energy. And I lost the will to live, not really, but you know, and it was like one of those, wait, why am I doing this again? And so sometimes it's like, keep that renewable energy source fresh. Like, why are you doing this? You know, what is it about it? And so if it's about the coaching, keep finding a way to coach, even if it's for free, until you build the business, so that you just keep find the things that take your breath away in a good way, and keep in touch with those, because you might lose your path and then start to feel like you lose your confidence, or you lose some of the energy. And I find that for each and every one of us has something that just lights us up. Go to the light. Not that light at the end of the tunnel, but go to the light. Yeah. Sorry. Took it a little too literally.
That's a great bit of advice, though, because it is very easy to get caught in the mundane tasks of running a business, because it isn't all glitz and glamour. That's the part that's often shown to everybody. Yeah. But there are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes. And we had a similar conversation with another guest earlier this season that was talking about, you know, you got to do all these things in running a business, and you're seemingly meant to be great at them as well. And that can be really overwhelming when you're not great. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the best at accounting, and it's not necessarily something that I enjoy, but it's necessary. And I know, similar to what you're saying, as soon as I do a bit of accounting, it's like straight back into, what's a new workshop idea I could be working on? Because I need to be re-energized by something that I really enjoy.
Right. Oh, hallelujah. Well, as you were saying that, for some reason, something twigged for me too, this idea that I see this a lot with people who are new stage, want to develop their dream. And then we can talk ourselves out of it fast when we find other people who are doing things that are similar, right? Like, let's be honest, just heard this expression, and I might botch it up, and I don't know who to credit, so sorry. But like, there are no new messages, just new messengers. Like, I'm not the first person to ever talk about carpe diem. Like, I'm pretty sure the ancient Stoic philosophers have been talking about it forever, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I'll package it in a way that someone else might find kind of cool or not. And so same thing about this idea. Like, I remember early days going on to other, this is before 4,000 Mondays. So 4,000 Mondays is a bit niche, but like when I was doing like leadership coaching, yeah, there are a lot of other people doing something similar, and it's for good reason, because it's needed, and then we'll always need more. But I would look on other people's websites, and I would think, oh, you know, first of all, it was like, oh, it's already being done. Well, of course it's being done. And also that, well, they're doing it better. Of course they've been doing this for a long time, and still like limiting my time. Like for a lot of people, you have to limit your social media time just for sanity. I had to limit my competitive analysis time, because I found that it was sort of making me feel insecure in a way. Like I needed just enough information to know, okay, I should have these pages on my website or whatnot, but I didn't need to dwell there. And I just needed to remind myself that at that time, hey, I'm offering something that I'm excited to help people in these ways. And there's room for all of us. Like, and we can help each other, and actually networking with the people who in your town are doing really cool things that you love and admire and might even feel some envy about. Holy cow, like they're probably awesome people that you can be like, I love what you do. Let's talk about it. Let's have a coffee. Or again, like a margarita, whatever you want to do. But I love the idea that there are, just because someone else is talking about women in this weird branch of engineering and leadership and how you want to help them, that's okay. You can, you know, don't copy anyone's business model. That's not good. But like, if you have this passion, the more the better. If in fact, if someone else is doing it, they're already just proving that it's a proven business model. Or like you want to write a book on a topic and you get all bummed out because, there are already 4 out there. Good. It means they've already proven there's a model for it. Let's do the more the merrier.
Oh, that is such an amazing perspective, and certainly a message that I need to hear all the time. I love what you're saying and what you're sharing with us, Jodi. And I really have to say, I know I've mentioned this already. I've adored your book, especially because of all of your illustrations. You have such a unique and beautiful and humorous way of conveying all the messages that both Karen and I are so passionate about, all the evidence that comes through positive psychology and that whole topic of carpe diem or memento mori. I love the way you've packaged it up. And when I read your book, it's like, this is the book I wish I would have written. Absolutely adore it. And for everybody who hasn't read it yet, strongly suggest go grab the book. You only die once. And also watch Jodi's TEDx talk, How Death Can Bring You Back to Life. Now, what I would love to know, Jodi, in my eyes, like I really look up to you. I love everything you do and share on Instagram, on socials, with your work. To me, it looks as though, wow, you've absolutely made it. Like that's where I want to be. How do you feel? Is that ever something that you feel as well? Or how do you feel at this point of your entrepreneurial journey or solopreneurial journey?
Oh, well, first of all, your words of encouragement and kindness are just like a big hug. It's fleecy. It feels like fleece, and I love you for it. Thank you for that. It means more than you know. And the answer is no. And I get curious about, like, will it ever feel like we, have respectively arrived? I've been speaking a lot lately to some friends about how with the book just coming out, I said, I think I missed a step. I forgot to determine when I was going to feel successful with the book. And then we're all, of course, like those of us who study this stuff and, we're all like, that doesn't sound like a super duper healthy approach, because ideally happiness emerges as a result of just the natural occurrence of doing these things, not like I'm only happy when a certain amount of books have been sold, or like I'm only happy when 13,000 people, I don't know. And so I need your therapy couch, guys. But like, I do feel like to hear you say that you think like you're appreciative of some of the stuff I'm putting out. Maybe this is the cool perspective for all of us, is like, wow, there's no arrival state, which doesn't sound encouraging, but I also think it normalizes, like, there's always this like feeling of there's more, and is one part ambitious excitement, and it's of course the other part like the shoulds that we're trying to eradicate, like I should be posting more, or I should be doing more of these different things. So maybe now I'm realizing as I'm saying this, I might be turning into a cautionary tale. I'm not sure, but maybe it is about getting more in touch with, here's where I've landed. Happily ever after. It is like, it always comes back to the why. Like, why are we doing this? I didn't write the book so that it could sell a certain amount. I never actually had that in mind in the first place. There are some back to trappings of success. Like, you get a good mention in the media and it feels super like elating, but it's fleeting. And so same thing with all, like, however many likes or however many things that are those outward expressions of success. I have not found them to be fulfilling, damn it. Yeah. And so what really is getting back in touch with, like, when someone does send a really like touching DM or a message on my contact form, like people that I would never know from parts of the world that maybe have had a cool experience about, now I registered for scuba diving lessons. Like, oh my God, somebody's scuba diving now because they read You Only Die Once. And like, I really hope they don't die scuba diving. That would be terribly ironic, but they probably won't. And like, that is the coolest thing. And so like getting in touch with that, I'm sorry guys, I can't not be an asshole about these things, but these are the things where it's like, that's the point. So always getting back in touch with like, wait, why am I doing this again? Let me be careful not to get caught up in the outward metrics.
Yeah, and that's probably a beautiful reminder for our listeners too, the impact of our words, and, where possible, to pass on that gratitude. Just hearing your story here, Jodi, has made me think of, I actually just yesterday received an email from a boss of some clients that I've been coaching and consulting with, and he was just passing on his gratitude for the impact that it's had, and the improved sort of job satisfaction and work performance as well, but also the confidence in these leaders as well. But when you get those messages, it's just beautiful, and it just really affirms why we do what we do. So maybe just a little message here for our listeners. If somebody's made a big impact for you, maybe just let them know, because go a very long way.
Oh, I love how you took that and took it to a whole nice level. And Karen, think about like when you got that message, it felt really fantastic, right? And then can I also ask, like, did you save it somewhere? Like I have a warm and fuzzy folder on my inbox where like I'll try to like, do you have that where like rainy day is going to come and you're going to need to read those messages? Did you save it?
Yeah, I have a Google Doc filled with them, with a little bit of context and who the message come from. So
good. Oh, I love that for you. Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But no, thank you.
awesome.
That is lovely. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. There's so many things that I can't wait to pull apart with Micah in our post chat. Obviously, all lovely things. Jodi, it's been an absolute hoot talking to you. You've brought so much energy. It's early in the morning for us here. And, you know, it's funny when you're waking up and you're like, oh, gosh, early morning podcast, how are things going to go? But you've definitely brought the energy and the excitement. And I hope that other people are feeling energized as well just by listening to this conversation and encouraged to hear a little bit more and learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing. Would you like to just give a little shout out as to where the best place for people to be able to get in contact with you or see some more of your work? What might be the best way for them to be able to reach out and see all the great things that you're doing in this space?
Thank you for saying that and even for asking. It's generous of you. I live over at 4000mondays.com. And the options for the book are there. And then same thing on Instagram at 4000 Mondays. You have to spell out FOURTHOU, but you'll get there. Yep. And so I'd love to see you there. Thank you. And I've just loved spending this time with you. You guys know I am a little bit super obsessed with time. And I just feel like this has been a great way to spend this little block of time of life talking with you guys. And for free therapy.
And we are very honored to have been able to have this conversation with you, Jodi. It's been an absolute blast, as Karen said. Thank you so much for joining us and all the best for you for the future.
Oh, cheers.
Oh, love this conversation. Micah, I don't know, like, I feel as though Jodi is one of those people that you see publicly and not even publicly, just people that you know, right? And then you're like, oh, they're professional, they're, you know, charismatic, and then you get to spend a little bit more time with them and like, oh my gosh, they are so funny as well. Yeah. What an extra, like a little bonus for us as well. Like I don't know, I felt as though I could have laughed and laughed and laughed for days on end if we had to continue that conversation.
No, you know, I just thought you were going to say, and then you meet them, and even though they are such a big personality out there, you know, public figure already, you realize how human they are and how humble and just beautiful, because that is certainly something, even, you know, behind the scenes, the way Jodi, you know, interacts with me when no one is looking on Instagram and stuff like that. She is just the most beautiful, beautiful soul. You know, women supporting women is one of the terms that comes to my mind and so forth. But, oh my gosh, her humor, yes, hello. She is one of the funniest persons out there.
Absolutely. And I should also mention, I very much agree with your point too, that she's a beautiful person as well.
Yeah, you also did like her. I know, it's hard. Find something. It's like, bloody hell, what do these people do? Like, they look amazing, they're so successful, and then they're bloody humble and like good humans as well. Surely, you know, they could do without one of those.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and so like willing to give her time as well, right? Like,
I know.
Is there something particular? I was about to say, I feel as though there's probably like one of those triangles that exists around like these people. It's like they're either like really, really famous, they're, you know, hugely successful, or they're like really humble. You can pick two, but you can't have all three. I don't know. I feel as though Jodi she broke the rules a little bit there with that rule.
Like, that's cheating.
Yeah, a little bit, right? But yeah, what a fascinating conversation. I mean, I was sitting there writing down a bunch of different things. I don't know. Is there any big key takeaways for you? I mean, I've got a couple, so I might let you start. I feel as though I jumped straight into these with excitement.
Yeah, I know. Well, I just want to say, you know, she's just so amazing because obviously she lives and breathes the whole idea of memento mori as well as carpe diem. So memento mori, we all must remember we die. So that whole idea, you know, that drives and fuels me so much, is that we are so used to being alive, literally, that I feel like we automatically become used to it so much that we tend to slide onto autopilot mode. And so that is also languishing to some extent. And so she tries to reverse that, right? We can, by reminding ourselves of memento mori, that we all must die, that our time on earth is limited, 4,000 Mondays, right? You can try and reverse that and go, hang on a minute, let me be more courageous, let me try and live bigger, let me try and pursue my dreams. There won't be a perfect time. I just adore everything about that. And when I read her book, I kicked myself because I felt like, oh my gosh, this is the exact book I wanted to write. And I am glad I never did, because if I would have done that and published it around a similar time, I would have lost so bad. She did it so well. The way she writes, her illustrations, her humor, and then the knowledge. Because obviously she's also an instructor at Penn. She's got the Masters of Positive Psychology from Penn. So she's the whole package. But I was going to ask you, was there anything particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think this notion of how do we live our lives purposeful and to the fullest capacity, and it actually reminds me of a beautiful poem by Linda Ellis, which is called The Dash. Our listeners may be familiar with it. I'm not sure. I can share it if you like. I can quickly pull it up if you feel as though it might be useful.
I would love for you to pull it up and read it out.
Okay, cool. But this is it's a poem that's often read at funerals, which does seem a little bit morbid, but we might have also thought that, just looking at some of Jodi's work, it seems a little bit morbid, but it really is about that celebration of what's in between. And I'll read the poem and then give that little reflection at the end of it. So
and when you say the celebration of what's in between, you mean between birth and death, right? Just to clarify that.
Correct. Absolutely. So the poem reads, I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from beginning to end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For what matters not how much we care, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we lived and loved and how we spent our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be arranged. To be less quick to anger and to show appreciation more and love people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy has been read and your life's actions have been rehashed, would you be proud of the things they say about you and how you lived your dash?
That is so
it's hard for me. I was choking as I was reading it up because I've heard it read at many funerals and I have a funny way of seeing life. Well, some people say it's a funny way, but I see life as a true celebration. When I'm standing at a funeral of a friend or family member, I see the tears of other people. And I think my tears are sometimes a little bit different. I just see it as the celebration. I can't help but to think of all the good times and the good memories that I've spent with that person. And I'm not necessarily thinking of the end date, being the funeral. I'm thinking and celebrating the dash. And I really love it. And I think Jodi's work really speaks volumes to how do we live that purposeful, filled life where we can celebrate our dash.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And I love that you just read that out. I'm sure our listeners are appreciating it as well. And, I just got a bit teary because it is so important. It's such a fine line between sometimes grief and celebration or, of life. But this whole idea of the eulogy, that is one of those exercises you can do, right? In positive psychology, we have this exercise called the eulogy exercise or whatever, where that's just about, imagine your day has come and people are attending your funeral. Well, what would you love for them to be reading out about you? What would you want the people who love you most and who know you the best to say about you on that day? Because it's so important we gain clarity around that, because it gives us a chance to align our actions and our lives and our dreams and goals and accomplishments with that, right? I find it incredibly powerful. Have you ever done that? Have you written your eulogy?
I haven't. No, it's,
interesting.
I do think about it from time to time. So, yeah,
wow,
it could be a powerful experience to engage in.
And then tell me you're crying tears of celebration. I know it is confronting. But it's interesting. I have done it. I've written a short eulogy about myself. And also we don't need to approach those exercises thinking we need to get them right and we need to get them perfect. The same as, with values. It can be so hard for people to understand what their values are. You are allowed to pick some values today that you think are yours, and then as you go by, through your day, your week, your month, and you figure out, actually, I think that value needs a bit of tweaking. This is not really my value. This is my value. You're allowed to change it. That's the whole idea, for our brains to start paying attention to it,
Yeah, absolutely. And it is nice to just do a little self-check-in. How are we going? What do we need to do next? What can we do to be more proud of our next steps? It doesn't necessarily need to be big things. Sometimes it can be small little changes. Reaching out to a friend or a family member more regularly or something like that. Doesn't have to be that we have to go and complete a degree or we need to reach some big fitness
around
milestone.
The world.
Buy a big house or all of those things. And it actually links kind of nicely into another point that Jodi mentioned I really liked. It was leaning into the uncomfortable to sort of help with our accomplishments and things like that as well. And it actually reminded me of a beautiful story that I listened to from a rabbi, and he was talking about hermit crabs of all things. And I've used this a lot in my teaching at school, helping students overcome challenges and obstacles, this notion of leaning into them a little bit, because the story the rabbi tells is of a hermit crab. And for those that don't know, a hermit crab's just a little crab that's in a shell, and at some point they grow and they need to move from one shell to another shell. And what this rabbi is saying is that, the hermit crabs do grow to a certain point in their current shell, and they need to move into a bigger shell in order to continue to live. But what he states here, and the important lesson, is that the stimulus for growth, for continued growth, is that we sometimes have to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I really love that too, that it's like that acceptance of being a little bit uncomfortable with growth, and being a little bit unknown about, or feeling a little bit unsure. We've felt this before, and we've spoken about this with our guests, that self-doubt that creeps in, that uncertainty. Sometimes that's a bit of a necessity for growth as well. And we might learn a lot more about ourselves in that journey as well. I don't know if you've experienced that or can resonate with that sentiment.
100%. And I love that this is something that stood out to you and that you are bringing up now, because I'm such a fan of something called acceptance commitment training or therapy. So it's, sometimes used in therapy or predominantly I did some training in workplace contexts. The whole idea that the first step to change being acceptance of actually what is. And I think sometimes people confuse that with agreement, or, surrendering to a certain situation, being powerless or giving up power and stuff like that. It is not what that is. It's just about actually facing what is currently going on, facing that you're nervous about something, facing that perhaps you've outgrown a relationship, facing that perhaps you've outgrown your job. Any of these things that can be really uncomfortable, just facing them, because how often do we tend to just look away, try and ignore it, push it aside because it's uncomfortable? We don't like to feel it, let alone acknowledge it. So it's just about acknowledging that this is there, because then we are empowered to take action.
That's beautiful. And I love that you tied in
but
some
if we
examples.
ignore it,
but if we ignore it,
well, one of the most crucial life lessons, Well, if we ignore it, it's like a rock in the shoe. It's not just going to go magically away. It's like, it's the opposite. It just starts off as a little bit of discomfort. You can ignore it, just push it aside with your toes kind of thing, whatever. At some stage, you'll get a blister, and that blister, will, not get any smaller. This is a bit gross. Should have taken a different analogy.
No, it's still a good analogy. I mean, that will be a deterrent, I'm sure.
That's so true, though. Yeah, exactly. Look after your feet, people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, big fan of it. And I don't know if you know, but I once did this 10-day Vipassana meditation to basically learn just that, because, and I think we've probably brought this up in one of our previous episodes too. One of everybody's all-time favorite book is Men's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Where he talks about one of the quotes that I'm going to stuff up now, but between stimulus and response lies freedom, or however it goes. That's the whole idea. So in this Vipassana meditation, because as human beings, we are so used to, our brains are very quick at forming habits. Right, and responding to certain way, responding to certain stimuli in a very quick and consistent way, that takes away choice. So that's the whole distinction between reaction and responding. Responding is something we choose. Reaction is something that happens automatically. So when I did this meditation, Vipassana retreat, 10 days in silence, and you meditate between 10 and 12 hours every day. But literally, like the first 3 days, so it's non-religious. The whole idea is for us to learn to undo this conditioning, because that's what it is, right? And like literally the first 3 days, we just focused on this little triangular area between the nose and the upper lip. And all we were tasked to do was to notice what was there, because obviously we have sensations in our bodies the entire time. There's constantly stuff happening, cell renewal, whatever, blood flowing through it, whatever, and we tune out of that, right? Because it's like this cocktail party effect. We just focus on sort of like one thing at a time until something becomes really painful, like that rock in the shoe. I just had to throw that in there. But the whole task is just to notice what's going on without reacting to it. So if it's itchy, well, don't scratch, just notice it and move on. If you feel the wind, don't get attached to it, thinking about it, but just notice and let it be. It was life-changing. I found it really life-changing. Yeah. And so the whole idea is obviously it starts with acceptance.
Yes, that's our starting point.
You just notice.
Yeah. That's a good little takeaway, I feel as though, for our listeners too. Like that, I think you did a really great job highlighting, what acceptance is in this space, and how crucial it is to help us navigate forward and move forward. I feel as though we're yet again at the end of another really enlightening episode.
I agree.
And an exciting one. That's really got me thinking again. Now I'm very much thinking about that dash and how many Mondays have I got left, and how am I going to spend them, which I think is a nice little reminder around living intentionally and with purpose.
I know, and anyway, what I want to say is we're nearly at the end of our very first season. We've got a couple of more guests coming up. Who's up next? Do you want to give our listeners some clues?
A couple of hints.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel really fortunate in being able to comfortably say that this next guest is someone who I really admire, not just for the way that they've conducted themselves in a really professional manner, but also personally. They are somebody who lives by their values. They have created a very successful education business. They have also started an amazing non-for-profit helping young entrepreneurs, or just entrepreneurs in general, do some amazing work. I don't want to reveal where, because that might give away too many hints. But they have consulted with some very big names around the world around social impact, and that is most definitely, I would say, their driving force, looking at social impact and how do we support other people to do their very best. They've published a couple of books. One of them recently, that's we'll definitely link in the show notes when that episode rolls around, but very much around helping entrepreneurs find their way.
So I think for many of our listeners, they'll really enjoy. Do you think is that enough? That's probably enough hints.
I think that's enough. It's like, can you read my face?
Okay, cool,
it's like,
cool.
cut it.
Yeah, fair. I don't want to give too much away. We don't want people to puzzle it together too much too quickly, but a very exciting guest for our listeners to join in as we get close to wrapping up our season, and what a season it has been. We hope that this episode, like all our others, has provided you with some great insights, tools, tips, some practical takeaways to take with you on your journey to help you out in your life. But stay tuned. Only a couple of episodes to go to round out the season. But thanks always for your support. Take care.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We hope our conversation helped normalize the struggles so many of us face on the path to success. While on the outside things often look like sunshine and rainbows, this is rarely the experience for anyone behind the facade.
But instead of letting that demotivate you, we hope it does the exact opposite, to let it fuel you to keep pursuing your purpose and realize your potential. Just without the added burden of feeling inadequate, and a little more patience, some tips, and self-compassion instead. For further info, head to our website, flourishingunfiltered.com, and get in touch with us via our socials, @flourishingunfiltered.
Now, if you or someone you know is struggling with feelings of loneliness, low mental health, or suicidal thoughts, please know that there are people who care and treatments that can help. We've compiled some helplines for you in the show notes.
It's a wrap for Flourishing Unfiltered today. Please give us a follow and leave us a comment and a review. We hope you tune in next time.